And a good Thursday evening, everybody, as we come to the Thursday part of our week. And we're grateful to have everybody with us on this Thursday night. It is always good to have old friends with us. And when they're so old that when they walk by a graveyard, men chase them with shovels, we mean that with all sincerity. We're grateful that, you know, that's where I live. I got to be careful. Grateful to see, grateful. I remember I said something corny to you one night, and I think you said something like, if you say that, tell me that joke again, I'm going to shoot you myself or something. And I knew you were, it was at Christmas time, so I figured, you know, you were in the spirit of Christmas. But it's good to see you tonight, Brad Johnson. It's been a long time. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Yeah, it has been too long of a time, and I never shoot anybody just once.
That's why I love you, Johnson. You know, we hadn't had it. We need to have that steak again. We had a good time last time we saw each other, and it's good to see you, man. We missed you. I know you had a little physical bump last month, and we try to get you on once a month, but you know you're always welcome here, and you know, we've been doing this for 7 years, and I've known you just about most of those 7. I met you early on in the early stages of the network, and of course, we've come a long way since them days. And but it's always been a pleasure, and you know, we've got a lot of going on tonight, man. I tell you, we just do, and I'm gonna talk with you a little bit about what you're doing, because what you're doing actually is important as it relates to the nation and as it relates to this election coming up. I know people don't, when you say the word Montana, it don't gender a lot of ooh and ah in people, but it's a beautiful state. I've been there a couple of times and would love to go see it again. But you're up there doing some election work. You're going to be on some radio stations in June. And tell us a little bit what's going on, because you're really dealing with the swamp in the backyard. Now, you talked about this a little bit last time, but you've really put some effort and grease in the game to get this Montana situation right now, because it's going to have ramifications with the national election ultimately.
Yeah, there's you know, kind of a host of reasons and processes I've been going through this. I've been active around the conservative movement for a long time now, and one of the problems with the conservative movement, with all the political people, is that everybody is, I mean, the vast majority of the people are in it for a reason. You know, yeah, they may be conservatives, they may be Christian conservatives, you know, all of these things might be true, but generally speaking, they're out for number one first, second, and third, and then if there's any air left in the room, they'll push conservative things. So it's one of the things I noticed. I think most of your listeners or viewers have or know that, you know, I'm ex-CIA operations guy, and,
right.
I live in the Washington D.C. area, so I'm around the swamp all the time. I go to the meetings, and meet these people, and talk, and at the different events that are going on. Some private, some are larger events and things like that. And I don't go to the really large events, because, you know, it's guys coming in making speeches trying to make money mainly, you know, so I'm not too interested. But you know, sort of this evolution that I've gone through in being active in this, and I'll tell the story. I was actually sitting having lunch with Mike Pompeo, who after that became CIA director, and after that became Secretary of State under Trump. And I was telling him, you know, because he was on the oversight committee, and I was telling him a lot of the shenanigans that go on, and just saying, look, you know, this is a mess. I mean, it's seriously a mess, and it's only gotten worse and gotten people killed and things like that, which we can go into those stories too if you want. I looked at him and said, who's fighting this? You know, what group is out there? Because wherever they are, I want to find them and join them and get stuff done. We need to fix this very serious deterioration that's taking place. And he basically looked at me and said, nobody. So I thought, you know, right on the spot, I thought, well, you know, screw it. Then, you know, with the F word, I'll do it myself. And, you know, so that was why I started Americans for Intelligence Reform. You know, and I had just gotten attacked by the Chinese in a number of things. The Office of Personnel Management, where all federal employees' personal information is, got hacked by the Chinese. Chinese took my information, gave it out to a local group that then began hunting me, you know, making threats and stuff like that. So went to the police and did all this stuff over that. But, you know, it's like F me, F you then, so fine. I'm always happy to talk bad about the communist Chinese because of who and what they are. But all of these things have led me down this path where I've gotten involved. And so I started meeting a lot of the conservative groups out there and organizations. And mostly it's too many of them are money-making schemes. They might, like I said, they might actually do some good stuff too, but they want to pay their own salary. It's for me at AAR, I don't do any of that. I just try to fund it to get done everything I can do. So as I've done this, I look at it and there's a lot of good people out there like yourself and some of the big national shows and things like that out there that they're pretty getting the word out pretty well. So I decided to kind of take a different tack, and people don't want to fund intelligence things because you have a religious element to what you do, and so the Christian-based viewership will be interested in those programs as well. And you correctly don't invite me to those shows, but
we won't go there, Jonathan. But go ahead.
Yeah, 5 minutes ago I'm just saying I never shoot anybody once. That's not the guy going on that show. So, as I've gone through all of this, I'm thinking to myself, well, it requires a little bit different approach, and so what I've done is start picking areas where I can really make a difference on the ground. Because, I'm no George Soros, but that's the same conclusion George Soros went through. He arrived at the same conclusion, a much richer guy to make the decision, but it was the same decision. And that's why he's throwing a lot of money into these local elections and things like that. But like I said, I don't have the money to do that. But I took a look at Montana. Montana is a state that is relatively conservative, but it's been trending slowly as these Democrats get in, the little Democrats get in, they're like a virus. They get in and they only hire their own from then on out, and that's what's happened to our federal agencies. Once they get in there and get entrenched during a Democrat presidency, they never let go, and they always stay, and they only hire in their own. So in Montana, they have a state Supreme Court, which that's normal, and their state Supreme Court is the most overturned state Supreme Court in the 50 states. And it's because it's an all liberal. It's 7-person Supreme Court, 6 of which are very liberal, only 1 of which is even vaguely conservative. So I took a look at the whole situation and several years back started getting involved there. So I'm headed back out to Montana on the 6th. Going to be there for a few days doing some campaigning. Going to be doing a Young Republicans event. Going to be, I do interviews when I'm out there, and you mentioned the radio. I'm going to be on the Aaron Flint show. I don't have the day and time exactly in front of me, but I'll be on the Aaron Flint show on the 7th or 8th, I believe.
Is that a local?
He's a.
It's local, right? It's local, right?
Guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's statewide, but it's Montana, and he's got a great show, very popular out there, and does good conservative, talk radio sort of stuff. So I've done a lot of interviews with Aaron and have a little bit of a relationship with him and try to always talk to him when I'm out there, get on the show once in a while when even from the DC area when something hot's going on. But I go out there and I try to speak for some candidates and things like that. I mean, I go out there on my own dime. It's not paid for by AIR or anything, and try to campaign for these guys, help them raise money and stuff. But
is there? There's no truth to the rumor that you're campaigning to get your face put on Mount Rushmore. I know that's nothing true to those rumors, right?
No, you know where my face has spent the most time. I'll tell you, and it's a clean story. I can say this one. You remember that we had the 2 Republican traitors that were on the January 6th commission. All those Democrats up there, and they covered up all the truth of everything, and then were reporting stuff as if, Trump did this and that and the other, bad boy Trump, orange man bad, all of that stuff they just did over and over and over. Well, my face was on the big screen at those commission meetings.
I remember that.
I think more than Trump's.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I remember that.
They were all over me because, I was on the leadership board for what they call conspiracy theories. But at any rate, that's where I would say my face. Every once in a while, I'll see somebody look at me funny, and I'm always thinking, well, they were probably an avid Democrat following those January 6th Commission reports and stories that they were doing. Talk about, conspiracy theory. All that stuff. That whole thing was one big conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
And then they all shake their heads yes, like those dolls, with the bobbleheads, and they all shake their heads yes, and go, oh yeah, it's true, it's true. And, it's the old, Nazi propaganda method. If you say it over and over enough, people start to think there must be something there.
I wanted to bring you on tonight. I mean, I'm grateful for your Montana trip. We'll keep posted on that. I hope I can join you on one of these days before the election. But
that'd be fun.
I'd love to do that. I really would. I'd love to see that state again. I want to ask you tonight. I sent you a story that caught my attention, and basically it's sort of insinuating that the drug cartels, Brad, and of course we know the border has been a complete mess, and all this lawfare against Trump, all this stuff that's going on in the Middle East, all this drama with Biden and all this crap the news media covers for him. And it just seems like every day there's a Hollywood actor that's punching some girlfriend in the face. And I'm not making light of that, but it just seems like our attention is so diverted, and this border is still an open sewer of nothing but ill contents, terrorists, people that want to do us harm. But this article was basically saying that there are cartels, transnational cartels, drug cartels operating in almost nearly 50 states of the union. And I know that you deal a lot with overseas things of this nature in the past. What is your take on this? And are we looking at something that these cartels have infiltrated the country that bad since this border's been open? Was that article overstating it, or do you think it's a legitimate concern that in every one, I know in some states probably more than others, but certainly it's sort of an eyebrow-raising article to believe that we've got transnational people and terrorists operating all over the nation tonight from the north, south, east, and west, and even up here in conservative Tennessee and these hills. I mean, who knows what's lurking around the corner, man, when you sit down at a restaurant in Denny's and somebody's ready to pull an AK-47 out and blow the hell out of everybody.
I would say, no, your viewers don't have access to that article right here as we're talking about it, but your kind of core question there was, is it overstating it? And the truth is absolutely not. If anything, it understates it. It's very, very kind version of what's going on. This has been growing as a problem for many, many decades, and they are just very simply transnational organized criminal groups, the narco traffickers, and they're making, it's a multi-billion-dollar annual industry. So a lot of these guys are bringing in serious money, and they're not, a lot of them started out as kind of narco trafficking groups on the border, but they've grown from there. And anything that makes them money, basically, they'll do. And so in the areas they control, if it's smuggling people across the border, if it's working for the Chinese or whoever will pay them money, they do it. And they are most assuredly, they're not all in all 50 states necessarily, but all 50 states has these transnational organized criminal groups in them. There's no place safe from it. Some are bigger in certain areas and some are bigger in other areas. And of course, they fight each other too. And you can find, dead bodies. I would kind of track it based on that, because where they come into conflict, they shoot each other for one reason or another, or maybe somebody didn't pay up on the deal they were supposed to and things like that, and they have to enforce it. So, I mean, a lot of the unsolved murders of young males in every area, everywhere, a lot of those are criminal group activities where they're killing each other for some reason or another. And of course, nobody wants to report that in the news anymore. So.
That was my next question to you, and it goes beyond the news. And I'll even ask about the three-letter agencies. Or do you think that the FBI of this nation, are they so woke politically that they have just ignored this? Or do you think they're aware of it and they're not doing nothing about it? Do you think they're tracking these people? What's the line of defense? I mean, because it's sort of, look, the article troubled me without a doubt. And your assessment is, I believe, absolutely correct. I don't think they're operating, but they certainly are there. But on a level of 1 to 10, where does the FBI, CIA, NSA stand on this, because this to me is a national security threat, Brad. This is not just gang turf wars. This is people that are wanting to subvert the nation and kill innocent citizens, and it's not a good look. And if they don't know where these people are at, or they're not trying to stop them, what does that say about the people that's supposed to protect us?
All the federal agencies have known about this for decades. I mean, be thinking along the lines of 30 years. This problem has been growing for at least the last 30 years.
Wow.
And, narco trafficker groups were growing and growing and growing and getting big. And there's what we do against narco trafficking is nobody's really interested in stopping it. I'm not saying that people love it and they want it to continue to happen, but nobody's really interested in stopping it. I mean, for example, the cocaine trade. The cocaine trade, we could bring it to its knees in a week, easily. Every 90% of all cocaine is transported somewhere along the line by aircraft. Either the paste that they get out of the poppies, then to a plant where it's processed, and then to another place where it's processed again, and then packaged and all that. I mean, somewhere along the line, 90% of that cocaine is transported. We know where those aircraft are. We know whose they are. All of that stuff we know. But the problem is, can you arrest them and prove it in court? Will the local authorities go do it? All that sort of stuff. Those are all the problems. They're political in nature. But if we just made up our mind and said, screw all of you, you're corrupt if you're not stopping it, we just shot down all those aircraft. Yeah, I mean, there's probably 2 people in each plane. You'd kill those guys, but they're narco traffickers.
Right.
And,
right.
They're flying cocaine around. If you just go shoot those down, like I said, we could destroy the cocaine trade. That would probably take them at least a decade to even work their way out of that hole. And do it in a week. But, there's no political will because, we kill somebody and, they kill people all the time. They shoot Americans all the time. And what do we do about it?
Nothing.
Jack shit, nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
No, we don't. Interesting. Well, we're going to follow that story. We'll see where that leads. Listen, I wanted to mention to you, I got a breaking news story tonight. I was at an event, and the restaurant that we were holding it in had the TV on. I heard tonight, I don't know if you've heard this or you're aware of it, that China started doing some kind of military exercises into Taiwan tonight. I hope I read that right. Have you heard anything about Chinese aggression in Taiwan? Because I know that's been a concern with a lot of people for a lot of years, and people have just swore up and down that China, they've been threatening to do it for a long time. This breaking news tonight tended to indicate that there has been something a little bit more than just threats. Have you heard anything about that?
Supposedly what they're doing is doing military drills.
That's it.
In those spaces around Taiwan. So that is something that they've done before. But I mean, make no mistake what those are. Military drills is what, I don't know what they're calling them, but those are dry runs. Those are dry runs for invasions of Taiwan. I mean, there's no mistaking what's really going on. And China is absolutely clear that they're going to do it at some point. If they can't do it one way, they're going to invade. And if they can politically absorb Taiwan, kind of like what they did with some of the other Singapore and other places,
right?
And on the various places on the continent there that they view as Chinese. If they can't do it that way, they will invade. And just across the Taiwan Straits, which is very narrow, there are 3 brand new air bases, 2 for fighter jets for air superiority and then bombers, and 1 for helicopter, which is transporting troops back and forth. Those were just built on the other side. Those were brand new in the last year or 2. And those are built there for one reason and one reason alone, and that is for the attack against Taiwan. Now, there has been some military aid that just got through the Biden thing. It was part of the negotiations that the Republicans were forced in. If he wanted to get some stuff to Ukraine, then he had to get some stuff to Taiwan and Israel. By the way, on a side note, if you don't mind, Mike, getting off into something else.
No, go ahead. Absolutely.
On Israel, it's just come out that Joe Biden was having some negotiations with with Iran, the Iranian president, and was upset because that guy got killed. boo-hoo.
We were going there next. We'll go there now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. And he was upset. One of the reasons he's upset because they had something of a meeting of mind and both agreed on a number of things that were important to be done. And one of those things that was so important to be done was to see a change in leadership in Israel. They agreed that they should both get rid of Netanyahu. And
wow.
That I gotta say, I mean, that's awfully close to being a traitor. That's
breaking news tonight because
kind of seditious in its nature.
Yeah, that's breaking news because we've heard, the Blinken and him have both said that, but the Iranian element to that has not been brought into this by the media, that he was working with Israel's avowed enemy to get rid of Israel's prime minister. So we got sort of a breaking news story on the McFiles. Brad, that is traitors. That is seditious.
Yeah.
And let me.
I don't know that he actually did anything, but I know that they agreed that they both wanted to see Netanyahu out. Now, what they did beyond that,
wow.
Who knows?
Was this the guy? And this is the guy that crashed in the helicopter. Passy or Rashi or whatever.
Yeah, he crashed. Yeah.
Sounds like Rash to me.
Should I?
Jason Miller, if he's out there, he would tell me that Rash. He said Jason Miller would say something. He says Rassy would sound like Rash, and I won't go where that Rash leads. But you're right. I mean, but I want to ask you about this because this is where I was headed next after the China. I will follow the China story. I hadn't talked to you in a long time, and there's been a lot of stuff that's happened since we've last talked in Israel. The ICC court is trying to arrest Netanyahu. You've got America stabbing him in the back. Israel is still fighting one of the most brutal terrorist organizations I've ever seen in my life in modern times. That the brutality, and Brad, they're digging in. These people, this propaganda war. I think Israel is fighting a harder war against the propaganda. They could wipe Hamas off in 30 minutes if people would just leave Israel alone, let Netanyahu do what he's got to do, screw the civilians. I don't care about the civilians, and I know that sounds cold tonight. Look, Hamas brought this on Gaza. Hamas brought this on the Palestinian people. Hamas brought this on by what they did. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. You care if you don't care about civilian life, and you don't care. They sure as hell didn't care about Israel's civilian life. And while I'm at it, I got to get your take on this. It pissed me off beyond words that the UN stood up with America's blessing, gave a moment of silence to Rashi, who when he died, and then America sends its condolences to a butcher, to a nation where a butcher died. And there was something else I heard today that, and it may have been sort of similar to what you were talking about with Joe Biden, these backroom deals, that somehow or another the UN got a nod from the U.S. to say, you go ahead and do this. It's okay with us. Hey, Brad, there wasn't a moment of silence for Israel on October the 7th. Nobody stood up for that moment when they had nearly 700 people injured and killed and butchered, and babies butchered, and women raped, and children raped, and men raped, and I could go on with a few vernaculars tonight. Look, it's disgusting. It's disgusting how we're handling this situation in the Middle East, and we're betraying our only friend, our only true political friend. There's a spiritual component to it. Lightning just hit outside, so the Lord agrees with me. But there's a spiritual component to this, and there's a political component to this. And Brad, it's dangerous for our nation, my friend. We're playing with fire, and we're going to get burned. What say you?
Yes. Now you were saying we're doing this stuff, and I would clarify that part of it a little bit. I would say it's the Biden administration.
I'll agree.
All of these things
I know. That's what I mean.
I think the American people as a whole don't view it as good. It's one of the other things I want to mention to you about the civilian casualties in Gaza. First of all, the statistics that we're getting of how many people are killed are strictly coming from Hamas. They're the ones giving those numbers. And they're the ones that want high numbers because that's their propaganda game. So you can be assured that the numbers that they're giving are not true. What the real numbers are, probably there isn't anyone that knows. The second aspect of that is they purposely will drive those numbers up because they'll go into densely populated civilian areas and set up mortar. And so what happens is they start firing rockets and things into Israel against the Israeli civilian population. And what happens? They get taken out by counterfire. But they're set up in places on purpose to cause higher numbers of casualties. So they're putting these people in harm's way on purpose because they want dead bodies. They want those photographs of dead bodies.
Yes, they do.
But
Yes,
what they're doing
they
is
do.
firing rockets into Israel against Israel. And what do? If they're firing rockets at you, what do? You take those rockets out. What do you do if they've been placed inside civilian areas? Well, you're not aiming at civilians. You're aiming, it's counterfire. You're trying to take out the rockets, but those civilians get killed. And of course, that's what they do over and over and over and over and over. And of course, nobody wants to cover that or talk about it. Like I said, if it had just been normal fighting, where Hamas had not gone into hospitals and not gone into neighborhoods and apartment buildings and apartment blocks and things like that, if they had not gone in there, the civilian casualties would be, minuscule. Much by, they're saying 35,000. You'd be maybe at 10% of that. It would have been much, much better. But
Yeah.
they do it on purpose.
We're going to bring Jeemes in here in a minute. He's waiting for me to call him, but I want to get y'all together. But I do want to ask you a couple of quick questions before we get the two of you talking. What do you think? Let me ask you about the hostages first. In Brad's humble opinion, do you believe any of these hostages are alive that Hamas is holding?
Yeah, I think there are probably some that are alive. There's definitely going to be some that they've tortured and killed. But I think they use these guys as pawns. So they want bargaining chips always. So there'll be a few of them that are alive. Yeah, hard to say the numbers, but if there's 100 there, you can probably figure 50 dead, 50 alive, something like that. And they also share them around. So they give other groups as kind of a reward for cooperation. They'll give them, people that they've captured, hostages that they're holding, so that group can use it for their purposes and stuff. So it's one of those little profit sharing things, as I guess you could call it, but that's why they do it.
That is unreal. Do you are there any Americans, to your knowledge of what you know about it, or how many Americans have we got still over there that have not been accounted for?
I don't know. I don't know that number, but there are going to be some, and I don't know if there's any that are still alive. They would probably make a better hostage. Most of those guys are going to be dual citizens, so hard to say what would happen with them, and it depends on what group too. Some of these groups like to torture and kill because they'll do recruitment videos with that. Others like to hold on to them for bargaining chips. So it just depends on who has them and what they're after.
Ireland, Spain, Norway, France. France backed the UN, the ICC court. I want to ask you about the ICC court, but I also want to ask you about Spain, Norway, and Denmark, of all places, that backs the formation of a Palestinian state. And Brad, I was reading the ICC complaint against Netanyahu yesterday or Tuesday night, and in the complaint itself, they say that Netanyahu has committed crimes against the state of Palestine. And I want to remind my audience tonight, and most of this audience gets this, but there are a few knuckleheads out there that listen to us that don't. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but it's just the facts. There is no Palestine. There's no state called Palestine. They're trying to form one, but I don't think it's going to happen. And there's a spiritual reason for it, but there's a political reason for it too. But when you see these nations backing Israel's enemies, what does that do to the makeup of the Middle East? Look, you have served overseas in these theaters, man. You know the danger that this country faces overseas to begin with. Look, we can't trust nobody right now. There's nobody that I don't know, and I guess that's a better question as a part B to this question. Are there any nations left that America can have confidence in that's got our back right now and Israel's back? And look, it don't even have to be both. I mean, Israel's got no friends. But are we in the same boat? Do we have any friends?
Well, unfortunately, the way our political system works is, Biden is a senile a-hole, and so, he's in charge, so who wants to be friends with a guy like that?
That's true. I've been called that before too, by the way, so I don't know, maybe, but go ahead.
So you probably been called that by better people than me. Too, think about it. He's a very cantankerous, old, senile. I'm literally all of those.
Yeah, I know.
I've said this to you before, but on TV shows, if you watch the news, foreign language news in other countries and stuff, they don't say stuff like, "Is he senile?" They'll have talk show panels over what type of senility he has. Everybody knows it, and they talk about it as a fact, and they're trying to diagnose from a distance and stuff. But so you've got this guy you cannot count on. I mean, look at what he did in Afghanistan. He snatched victory, out of reach to us. We were winning. We had everything set up and put in its place, a complete destruction. I mean, the Air Force base that we lost there is a big deal. The Americans that got killed as a result there is a big deal. And he took away, some important capabilities that we had by losing that air base. And it's thing after thing. He's doing some similar things. We're pulling out of, I think it's a couple of places in Africa as well. In some cases, they've asked us to leave because the Chinese have gotten so powerful in the area that they can influence these nations to ask the U.S. to leave. And he's allowing all this to happen. And if you look at, there's just overwhelming evidence. There's former partners that have testified. There's email evidence. There's deposits in banks and checks and all of this stuff that it looks like it's all coming from China. And I think Joe Biden, based on the evidence, it looks like he's working for the Chinese. So everything that the Chinese have been doing, they've been allowed to roam free. And if he's enriching himself, if that's what's going on, if he's enriching himself, he's turning a blind eye to it. Which, by the way, I think that's part of why the Democrats are always going Russia, Russia, Russia. We get things like time after time after time, we figure out what the Chinese do and catch them at it. And Democrats are always going, well, Russia, they're hacking this, hacking that. The confirmed cases we have of hacking are all the Chinese.
I know. I want to welcome to our show tonight. I had sort of hinted that we would do this. We've got your old buddy Jeemes Akers on the phone tonight. And, man, we got the dynamic duo. I feel like I should pass my note card around and get autographs from him and you, man. This is like the CIA Batman and Robin, and I don't know who's Batman and who's Robin. But, James, good to see you tonight, man. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Good. Brad's on the screen with us, and let you say hello to him.
Jeemes, how are you this evening?
I'm doing fine, Brad. Long time since I've talked to you.
I know. You don't get back up in this area too much anymore. I miss our lunches.
Yes, I do too.
Well, I want to thank Brad. Go ahead, Brad. Go ahead.
I do not want to do a Batman Robin thing because I do not wear spandex. I don't care what color. I'm not wearing spandex.
I should have said.
Well, I think you should refuse the spandex too.
Yeah, I think what I should have said, this is the best Elvis backup duo we've ever had, because y'all can sing backup for Elvis. It'd be a better thing, right? That's what we could have. Hey, I want to ask you both. James, we were talking about Israel and the Iran situation. You were with me Tuesday night. We were talking about the Palestinian state, and Brad was making some great points about our government and our friendships in the world. I ask you the same question. James, have we lost, do we have any friends left overseas right now in America that we can trust, these nations? Do we have anybody that we can turn to right now in this time of political upheaval?
Well, one of the few, we're trying to cut their throats, Israel. So, well, let me put it another way. If you were another country in the world, would you trust the United States under this administration?
That's what Brad was just saying. Basically, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. That's interesting. Let me ask you this, and I'll let Brad chime in on this too. The situation that is developing, and I asked James this Tuesday night. Brad, I'll ask you: do you see a shift in Iran with the hardliners? Do you think this continues? The hardliners still rule, or do you think the people of Iran are going to rise up and change direction? Or can they even?
No, I think that the boot of the powers that be is on the neck of all the normal people in the population. I don't think there's much chance for an uprising. They would need some outside support to really be able to do anything. Which, by the way, if there's ever going to be a U.S. policy where they want to do a clandestine operation of that nature, have your girl call my girl. I want a piece of that.
I bet you do. I think we've got the development of a presidential ticket here. We just got to figure out which one of us wants to be president, vice president. I put Johnson as my definitely Department of Homeland Security guy. I'd give James the title of I don't know what position he'd want. But listen, I do want to ask you both. This is sort of a off-topic question. You both have served our country well. Brad, when I've asked you this a lot at the beginning when we started doing these network shows, and I'm going to ask you this again tonight to see if your attitude has changed. If you had to list the top 3 enemies of America tonight, has there been any change since October the 7th that has made you feel like that maybe China, I know China's maybe behind some of this too. Is China still our greatest threat, or does this threat shift to the Middle East with the unrest and the upheaval that we see going on there tonight after October the 7th? And James, I'm going to let you chime in on that after Brad, but if you listed our top 3 greatest enemies right now to this nation, what would they be?
Well, the top 3 greatest threats to U.S. national security are China, China, and China.
Okay.
There are other threats in the world, but all of the other threats are second tier.
And you say, and when you say second tier, are you meaning that they don't even raise to the level of China, or do you think that they're just minor league players? I don't mean that to be funny, but do you think it's just the junior varsity compared to the varsity?
Well, the difference I would put it is that there is a cohesive long-term strategy on the part of China to destroy and undermine the United States of America.
Okay.
And they're building the capability to achieve that. So they are in their own little category. If you look at Russia, that's kind of beyond them. They're a threat. They're a problem. They can do a lot of bad stuff, but they don't rise to that. And I would, same with North Korea. North Korea is dangerous, and the guy there is crazy, but he doesn't rise to that level that China does. But terrorism is certainly a problem. Iran is certainly a problem. We were just talking earlier about transnational organized criminal groups. Those are a problem. All of those guys are a problem. They just lack that cohesive, strategic, long-term planning that's anti-American. And so that's why, really seriously, I'd say China's first, second, and third place, and then everybody else is kind of at the same level. They're more dangerous in some areas, less dangerous in other areas. All of them are dangerous, but they just lack that overall capability that China has.
Before I get to Jeemes, I want to ask you a quick question. Do you have any feeling that China has been behind any of this stuff with Israel? Do you think they've got their hand in this, or do you think they're just sitting back watching this and seeing what goes on in the Middle East to strategically jump in and sort of grab power? Because there's definitely a power vacuum over there right now. The United States is influenced as zilch. What do you think about that?
Yeah, we've made just mistake after mistake after mistake in our foreign policy. We're basically, feckless is one of the popular words lately, and I think that describes U.S. foreign policy under Biden. China is everywhere. They're active everywhere. There's zero chance that they're not involved there. They've got treaties going on with Iran. Iran is backing Hamas. I mean, they're involved. Can you prove how deeply involved? I mean, to some degree, probably. Certainly, I would hope that the intelligence does have some information on all of that, but to suggest for anyone to suggest that China is not involved is, I think, just a non-starter. They're clearly involved. Just how involved is the question. But anything that makes them stronger against the United States, they're active in that. Look at their Belts and Roads program. They're all over Asia, Africa, Latin America. They're even in Canada. So it's a worldwide active program on all levels with the Chinese.
Yeah. James, I'll ask you the same question. Do you share Brad's sentiment, or would you have a different list? Or I know China would be in that list. Do you feel like what Brad said is accurate? China, China, China?
No, I agree with him. Absolutely. I think the number one threat, if we're talking about geostrategic threats, China is clearly way out ahead of any other threat. And what differentiates them from the other threats is that they have the resources and the national will to do exactly what they're doing. And you know, if I like to look at future technology and what China is doing now with technology, and in the security areas, China now is producing more naval vessels for their navy than we were turning out at the height of World War II.
Wow,
that's an amazing statistic. And while we are thinning down, and we have our military, practicing for next year's gender games, then China is really playing the game serious, and Brad knows from his experience. I did a lot in Southeast Asia, and just at every turn, they were kicking our butt, and a lot of it is institutional. But make no mistake about it, the Chinese have been in the game for a long time of planning for the long run. And now things have become sort of critical for them because of demographic factors that have snuck up on them. So they only have, empires have windows of time, and China has to be calculating that if they're going to accomplish some of these things she has promised to accomplish, like bringing Taiwan back into China and a few other things, they probably have a decade to a decade and a half to accomplish those things. And that's a scary thought. There's one school of thought that one of the many factors that drove Putin into the Ukraine was pure demographics. In 10 years, the Russians wouldn't have enough young men to get into the military. And so, if I had to do it all over again, I think that I would study demographics and make it the top of my priority list. It drives a whole lot more than we think it does in terms of geostrategic implications.
Let me ask you both real quick, and let me just talk to our audience a little bit tonight. You're watching a very special McFiles Thursday night. It's so good to have my dear buddy Brad Johnson back with us tonight. He's been away for a little bit, but about Jeemes Akers, I thought this would be a dynamic little conversation. It's already turned into that with the two of them for a few minutes. But if you got a question for them, now Brad, we got to. He's past his bedtime by 6 minutes, but he promised me that he brought some warm milk. Jeemes has been up with me at 12 o'clock at midnight, so I ain't worried about Jeemes falling asleep on me. I'm worried about Johnson falling asleep and Elvis back there saying, hey, it's time to go to bed. But let me ask y'all this very serious question. What nation would y'all believe, and I hate to use the word fear, what nation would have the greatest capability to strike America quickly and deadly with some kind of military attack? And I know that there's a lot, when you say attack, that could be like cyber attack, but I'm talking militarily. I'm talking a missile or a nuke or some kind of weird thing. Have we crossed a point of no return where these nations do not fear our response anymore, that they know that we're in such a weakened state? Have we gotten to that weakened state that America would not respond? Or is all of this bluster trying to draw us into the very war that people are more scared of, and it's really a bait to get us into World War III? Brad, I'll let you start, and then I'll get James.
Yeah, I mean, the question, who's more dangerous for a strike and things like that kind of depends on, if you're talking about a World War III, wipe out the U.S. sort of thing, China, we circle back to what Jeemes was saying, and
Right.
I was kind of mentioning earlier, it's China. If you're talking about something quick and dirty, that's devastating, that could, like that, I mean, you'd want to look close.
Right.
If there were serious missiles in Cuba, that's just a few miles from Florida. So could there be missiles fired off out of there that would be really hard to stop because it was so close? And would that be a devastating quick attack? I mean, that's kind of an example of a different type of attack. So I mean, it would sort of depend on the scenario you want to look at. But as we've all kind of agreed, the greatest overall strategic threat is out of China. I don't know, the bluster, all the stuff going on. A lot of the stuff going on is kind of random. I view a lot of the situation now as kind of parallel to what we saw happening prior to World War I, where you have people going into their own camps and separating out into areas of interest in groups that are backing each other and allies and so on of different types. And there's some bluster taking place, as you say, and if you rattle swords long enough, there's going to be somebody eventually that pulls one out and stabs somebody. And World War I mean, it's something you and I have often talked about, but World War I was started by one guy with a gun in Sarajevo that shot up a duke.
Well, let me ask you this, not interrupt you, but let me interject something real quick, not interrupt you. And I'm James, and let you follow up on this. Has it struck y'all as weird that I've been shocked, honestly, that Iran has not been saber rattling, blaming Israel for this situation with the president, or blaming, and the foreign minister, the only thing I've heard was a stupid comment that the Iranian foreign minister claimed Tuesday that it was America's not paying the money that led to the helicopter crash. That's electrical. Has it shocked y'all that there's not been more bluster and more threats about the death of their very own president? It's really been quiet. If you think about it in terms of what Iran normally runs their mouth and does, it's actually been eerily quiet. Am I just not getting something here?
I think their pilots and equipment weren't ready to fly IFR, and it was bad weather, and they just flew it into a mountain. So it's just not the kind of thing you want to brag about.
Okay. Okay.
Our pilots are crappy, our aircraft's crappy, flew into a mountain.
Okay. 3
helicopters,
That's right.
They all flew into a mountain.
It's terrible. It's really terrible. It's really bad. James, what say you?
And they were Vietnam era helicopters.
Vietnam era helicopters. Wow.
Yeah, the Bell 211s, wasn't it, Brad? Yeah, those were produced during the Vietnam War. And so you've got, they were basically, they were flown during the Shah's regime, and so they're still trying to patch together that same sort of helicopter fleet. We talked about this the other night, Chris. Half of everything they put in the air in that massive attack on Israel malfunctioned and didn't even get close to the target. They have some major maintenance issues when it comes to mounting a campaign. The second thing is, and we've talked about this guy was a thug.
Yes.
He wasn't even popular in his own country. I mean, they're having to pay people to come out to demonstrate for the funeral. He was just somebody that everybody was sort of glad to get rid of.
Yeah. I got a couple of really good questions coming out of Facebook tonight. I'll ask both Liz question. Dennis, I'll get to your question next. Liz Goldman says, with all the nefarious acts that we have found out about Biden and his son's involvement with China, do you think Obama knew about all of this, especially all the money that changed hands? That's not a bad question, Brad, because there's a developing story tonight that they've uncovered more text that do not look favorable for Mr. President tonight and his relationship with Z. But her question is a good one. Does this go back to the Obama years? And James, I'll let you chime in on that. Do you think Obama knew about this stuff?
Me personally, I think there's no question whatsoever, because Obama was fully aware of what was going on in the Ukraine, and Biden bragged about the whole thing that he was doing
with Trump,
forcing Ukraine to fire that prosecutor.
Fire the prosecutor, yeah.
Charisma, where his son was being paid and all that. I mean, all that's corruption. So Obama was fully aware of all that. So I can't imagine that Biden wasn't. If Obama knew about that, he would have probably known about most of the rest of the stuff that was going on. So personally, I would say yes. I mean, I haven't seen any evidence of it, so this is just best guess.
Yeah.
But because he for sure knew about one part of it, I would think he must have known about all the rest of it.
James, you agree with that?
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with it. I was reading an article today about the history of spare parts going to Iran for helicopters and aircraft and the things, and during the Obama years, they put an end to sort of the embargo on spare parts and other things, hoping to get the nuclear deal, and all of that was ended with the Trump administration, and Biden hasn't saw fit to go down that road again. So there are a lot of things that are head scratchers from the Obama administration that still haunts the United States in terms of geostrategic types of issues today.
Interesting question from Dennis Floyd tonight. He says, I have read that China, Russia share a sub-base in Canada. Are y'all aware of that? Is that anything to that, Brad? Have you heard that Canada is letting them share a sub-base? I've got a follow-up question to Dennis's. How close are China and Russia right now? Are they friends? Are they geopolitical enemies? Are they? Where does their sort of weird relationship stand? And James, I'm going to let you answer that first, and I'll get to Brad second.
Well, I think there's a lot to the bromance between Xi and Putin. Putin has become less and less of the partner with the throwweight in that relationship. I don't think Xi lets Putin tell him much about how to run things. And I think Putin actively courts Xi's approval of things that are done in Russia. I have no doubt whatsoever that in terms of military strategy, that there's a whole scale sharing of information going on now between the Russian military and the Chinese military, especially with Taiwan. And as we have mentioned before, the Ukraine had 8 years to prepare for the Russian invasion. Taiwan has had 50 years to prepare for the Chinese invasion. And that lesson, I don't think is lost on Beijing's war planners.
That's interesting.
What say you, Brad?
What say you, Brad? He's taking my line. James has become the new host of the McFiles. He's been listening. What say you, Johnson? Well done.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think clearly Putin needs China more than China needs Putin. I don't think there's much doubt about that.
Gotcha.
That said, too, there have been some treaties that have taken place that have been, announced with a lot of fanfare, a lot of detail going on about what they are, but certainly in the areas of trade and cooperation, some probably relating to military and things like that. There's some depth to it. I don't see how it wouldn't be. As to Canada's involvement, Canada's been basically allowing the Chinese to do whatever they want in Canada for a long time. And I was talking to the intelligence service in Canada is part of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So I was talking to a guy who's in one of the senior leadership positions in the RCMP of the intelligence division. So their intelligence the equivalent of the CIA. And he said basically that China views Canada as a land-based aircraft carrier for putting them in a position to attack the United States.
Wow.
And I think they're acting on it, and I think the Prime Minister in Canada basically is perfectly happy to give the Chinese whatever they want. If you look at the intelligence failures that have been linked back to China that are based in Canada, there's just been incident after incident after incident, including at the viral labs and all of these sorts of things that have taken place in Canada. So there's been videos that have come out of Chinese in uniform marching in Canada and things like that. The Belts and Roads program is huge out there. They built an enormous complex out in Vancouver, British Columbia. I mean, they're all over the place out in Canada, and Trudeau is basically dropping trout and letting it happen.
Did I just hear you say that Trudeau is basically and maybe don't let me misquote you, so let me make sure I got right what you said. He's basically letting the Chinese have free way, and his greater play, whatever you want to call it, is to give China a easier way. If there is an attack from China on our country, they would possibly use Canada as a base. Is that sort of what I just heard you say?
Well, I don't know what Trudeau has in mind. I don't know what he thinks he's doing. I'm not sure that he's actually capable of it.
I was going to say, but
yeah, but China, I think, China's view of Canada is that Canada is the perfect land-based aircraft carrier.
Justin Trudeau couldn't take a cheeseburger out of a drive-in. That's all I got to say. So how can he make Chinese? Jeemes, what's your thoughts on that?
You know, the largest Chinese community in the Western Hemisphere is in Vancouver. And so,
Wow.
In my mind, I come up with these bizarre correlations, but there's a correlation between how Canada has to treat China based on its large Chinese population and how Biden has treated the Middle East based on key Muslim communities, i.e. votes in Wisconsin and in the upper Midwest. And so, politicians have a way of bending to where they think the votes may come from.
Wow, that's interesting. Got one question from Facebook, and we've been going right at an hour. We'll get you guys out of here in a minute. It's good stuff. Carol Smith says, should we be concerned with China not only buying up our farmland, but our businesses and regular land? I know that I get that question asked a lot from people because I see a lot of stories out there that tend to indicate that is happening. Brad, what's your knowledge about this? Do you see a lot of this happening? Do you see any red flags in that, or do you think it's just the Chinese being the Chinese, or should we be concerned about it? I mean, it's not a bad question because I've always had a question as to why they're doing it, but maybe it's just because Chris don't think in the terms like Brad Johnson would, because you're an operative and I run the mouth for a living. But what did you think about that? Should we be concerned about all this buying up of the land and the farmland and these businesses?
Absolutely, we should be concerned about all of that. I mean, and the Chinese, as we alluded to a number of times and basically laid out, I mean, they don't do stuff willy-nilly. I mean, this just isn't, oh, that's a nice farm, I'm going to buy it.
That's true.
They're putting a lock on food production. They're putting a lock on mining concerns worldwide. They're putting a lock on all types of ports, seaports, commercial ports, airports, all of that. They basically control almost all of the ports on the entire continent of Africa. They're making a lot of inroads in Latin America. I mean, they're doing this over and over and taking over a lot of things. Make no mistake, the Belts and Roads program is a loan shark program. I mean, these are all set up to one degree or another, depending on what's being built, such that the Chinese end up with control of it when it's said and done. There is a case in I think it's Djibouti. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think it's Djibouti where they own the port and airport and things like that, and have flown in Chinese troops into the country to maintain control of that. So I mean, I think that's the game plan. The more control they have, the more things they own there,
they're moving to have troops be set up in those places, so they're a worldwide organization and controlling land. So there's no question we should be viewing all this with alarm.
Let me ask you this, and either one, and Jeemes, I'll let you answer this, and because I got another great question following up behind this one for both of you. But Jeemes, do you think that this was going on before Trump, or do you think this really just started happening with Biden, or does it go way back into other presidents who were sort of not watching and keeping an eye on China, or maybe even in cahoots? You know, that's the other thing that's out there, that our government has been basically, look, Joe Biden, there's no doubt that the Biden crime family has had China money in their pocket. You'd have to be an imbecile and living in Siberia for the last 50 years not to believe that there's not Chinese money that's passed through his pockets. But does this just include Biden? I'm not sure it don't go way back. And I know that Trump fought China, and that's why they couldn't stand him. But is this something that's recent, or has this been going on for maybe decades, where they've been doing this stuff?
Well, as a historian, my view is that we have conducted foreign policy in exactly the wrong way with China for decades. You know, I mean, to me, it's undeniable with the corruption and the like with the administration. But there are deep-rooted problems with the way we conduct foreign policy in this country, and we've had the luxury of two oceans, incredible natural resources, and it hasn't turned out to bite us in the butt. But now, item number one, the United States is broke. China isn't.
That's a great point.
And so, we do not have the luxury of time or a superior resources or other things to deal with this issue. And let me throw another caveat in here. I remember, what was it, Brad? Maybe 20 years ago, there was this fear that not China is going to take over everything, but Japan was going to take over everything. They were buying all the land up and this, that, and the other. There was this tremendous book that came out by Ezra, what was his last name? Japan is number one. Ezra Vogel, Japan is number one. He was somebody in the national security apparatus. And there was this all-consuming fear that it was going to be Japan, who was, everybody was buying Toyotas, all Japanese goods, and it looked like they were going to have a heyday. And then they ran into a stone wall of demographics. All of a sudden, their society became very old, and it cost them a lot of money to take care of these elderly people, and a lot of the resources they had were soaked up with all of those sorts of things. China is looking at that same problem set, I would suggest to you, in 10 or 15 years. And so a lot of what we are afraid of, and rightly so, I mean, China buying farms next to nuclear installations, that's not an accident,
No.
And it's not because that the alfalfa fields look really good. There's a purpose in doing that.
You want to add anything?
But I would just throw that caveat out there.
It's interesting
that we have seen this sort of thing before. What has changed is that we are broke.
That's a great point.
And we cannot compete with China anymore. China's throwing all these billions of dollars into R&D and AI and all of these things, and we're just sort of doing it piecemeal.
You want to add anything to that, Brad?
Yeah, I would say I dead on with all of that. You'd asked too originally what was, when did all of this begin with China? And I would say, it's never not been that way with China. I mean, Chairman Mao looked at it all probably about the same.
The difference is they've gotten good at it now, whereas Chairman Mao couldn't do anything. He was going through a lot of rigmarole where he was killing hundreds of thousands of his own people where they're out melting pots and pans and things like that and calling it a leap forward. So they were hopeless, but they've come a long ways. This is I believe Jeemes can correct me, but I believe he's the fifth leader in a row from Chairman Mao being the first, and so there's really not been any significant change in game plan. Leadership has gone through a number of people, but there's really never been any change in the game plan for them. But they've grown economically, and as Jeemes correctly pointed out, I mean, the Navy that they're building, they clearly want to take over the modern day Silk Road, which is shipping commerce through the South Pacific, and they're looking at all the different island nations out there, Indonesia and Vietnam and Philippines, and they're measuring these islands to put in their bases and things like that, airports and so on, so that they can have absolute control over the shipping lanes, which something like 50% of all world commerce goes through those shipping lanes at one point or another. So it would be a major force. So I think they're just now finally able to execute all of these things they've long wanted to do. So I think it's always been a problem. I don't think there was ever a time after Chairman Mao that wasn't a problem. It's just the effectiveness of what they're able to do versus the idea and the plan itself.
Yeah. Final question for you both tonight. Thank y'all for being here tonight. Lane Wheeler it's a really powerful question. We've given Iran a bunch of money. Do either one of you or both of you believe that they've finally got the bomb? They just ain't told the world they've got it. What's your thoughts on the nuke in Iran? Do you think if they had it, they'd use it, or do you think they've got it, they're just not telling nobody? That's a great question. I think that's an excellent. I'm asking it myself inside. How close are they to getting it if they don't have it? And I'll let James, you go first, and I'll let Brad wrap us up.
Yeah, I think they're close. I think they're close to getting it if they don't already have it. The balancing factor there is all of those nuclear-tipped Jericho missiles that have now been modernized in about 3 different stages that Israel has. And so that's a constraint for the mullahs, because they know if they would do anything nuclear, I mean, they would just be pounded. You would have to destroy all of those Israeli missiles underground, otherwise you're signing your own death certificate, because that is the greatest counterweight right now in the Middle East is the Israeli missiles. It's not missiles anywhere else. It is those Jerichos that Israel has. And the big strategic question is, how far would they be pushed before they would push the button, not Tehran push the button, in my view.
That's a good point. Brad?
Yeah, that's an interesting balance between those two things. I mean, I think Iran would love to nuke Israel, but they've got to figure out a way to do it. They've always said they want to, and as crazy as these regimes are, they don't, they'll exaggerate stuff, but they don't tend to lie about their strategic desires.
Excellent point.
So I think they're accurately saying what they want, and it's just a question how to achieve it without dying in the process.
Well, and I'm glad you asked. Go ahead, Brad. I mean to interrupt you. Keep going.
No, that's fine. I made my point. Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to ask both of you, because I brought this up with James R. Monday night, going back to the 70s and 80s with Russia, when they were the big threat, because, all the movies were coming out about America and Russia getting in a nuke exchange, and people were scared of, the nuke fear was real in the 60s, 70s, 80s with Russia. But one thing about Russia, and there was a movie that came out in 1982 called War Games, and I never will forget it. Dabney Coleman came out. It's actually a cute little movie, but it was basically about this kid that hacked into the computer systems of the government. Yeah. And the Whopper. But the computer at the end of the day played a chess game, and where it controlled our nukes, but it played this game, and it realized that if we shot nukes off to them, we were going to be destroyed. And it was a mutual destruction thing. And it finally dawned on people that Russia, they were talking big, we were talking big, but we both had sense that we would wipe each other off the map. Does these mullahs, though, tend to walk to a different drum because this is religious, this is spiritual to them? I mean, they've got this crazy nutcase spirituality to them. Does that play into their thinking at all, or do you think that they, as you said, they talk a good game and they threaten, but deep down in their heart, they don't want to have a hole in Iran the size of Texas 10 times over and smoldering smoke coming up from them? Because this could take them out, like Jeemes says. Do y'all see that they're thinking like the Russians are? Is that I don't know if I'm asking the question the right way, but do you understand where I'm coming from? The Russians got it. Do the Iranians get it fully because of their spirituality stuff?
There's a way back in the day, Brad remembers this quite well. There was this debate in our organization as to whether individuals, particularly those leading at that time the Soviet Union and later Russia, acted as reasonable actors. In other words, faced with the consequences of nuclear annihilation, is that a constraining factor that keeps them from launching a surprise nuclear attack? And there were several close calls during the Cold War, including one that a Soviet missile commander refused to launch, because there was this weird reflection that gave Russian computers and at that time their technology an indication that there was a wave of U.S. missiles heading toward them. And it was an incredible act of bravery by a Soviet missile commander who said, that doesn't make sense. I know what our instruments are saying. I know what the screens are saying, but it doesn't make sense for the Americans to do that. And that person right there, he was later on invited to the United States. He was demoted in the Soviet Union and this, that, and the other because they said he should have followed orders no matter what. And there are 2 or 3 of those types of instances that happened during the Cold War. And so, again, we have to assume in certain cases that there are reasonable actors on the other side.
Okay.
Now, to your point, Chris, are the mullahs driven by all of these spiritual, religious concerns and perhaps even demonic concerns?
Apocalyptic concerns.
Are they any longer reasonable actors? And I have been out of that debate for a number of years now, and I don't know what conclusion they've come up to inside our building on that issue these days. Yeah.
Brad, you want to add anything to that? That's interesting what Jeemes said.
It is. I just, my gut feeling of these guys is they are, I'm sure that they have their logic patterns and all of that sort of thing, but I don't think it coincides with what we would view or even how the Russians would view it. I think you could look back at, say, for example, the Iranian and Iraqi conflict that took place, and they clearly, I just don't think, care about casualties. I don't think they look at it like we do, and certainly they have the ideals of becoming a martyr and things like that. So I don't think they look at mass casualties
right,
for a good reason as necessarily a bad thing. We're all lost. Even the Russians, Russians love their children too. They don't wrap bombs on them and go send them into a Marine base to blow themselves up.
Great point.
And those guys will. So I just don't know. I fear that aspect of it. Would they use a nuke even if they knew they would get destroyed? I don't know, if they thought they could absolutely take out Israel and they were all going to be martyrs and go get 40 virgins or whatever, maybe they would. I don't know. But that is certainly an excellent question.
It's an interesting argument because I looked at Hezbollah for a long time, and Hezbollah's leader is Nasrallah. And there's always been this debate whether Hezbollah would absolutely do Iran's bidding, or whether they would be more concerned with the political advantage they have now in Lebanon and the situation in preserving the status quo. And it seems like even since October, all those events that triggered the sort of a reaction region-wide, there are certain red lines that Hezbollah operates within. And it all goes back to this basic argument that we're talking about, and that is the value of life. Are there institutions and groups in the Middle East that have changed their viewpoint based on sort of a value of life? In my mind, and we've talked about this, Chris, that is the defining issue going forward the next 20 years. Is life valuable and sacred, or is it not? And we are having that debate in this country big time.
In this dangerous world we live in, that's a great question. Jeemes, I want to appreciate you coming on and joining the conversation tonight. This has been, I feel like we've had two heavyweights in the ring, and y'all have just hit it out of the park. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to talk to Brad here a little bit more, and we're going to say goodnight. But I appreciate you. I'll see you soon. Thank you for coming on tonight on a special McFiles Thursday with us.
You're more than welcome, Brad. Let's do this again. I always enjoy your thoughts on things, and would like to do it more often.
We'll get y'all together. I think we need to do this at least once a month. It was a great. I love these panels because we seeing the back and forth and the ideas. It's really good. But Jeemes, thank you again, my friend, and we'll be in touch. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Happy Memorial Day, man. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Okay. Bye. Bye, Brad.
Bye, Jeemes. Take care.
Jeemes Akers, everybody. Brad, it's so good to have you tonight. I wanted to just keep you a few more minutes. As you look, Jeemes made a great point there at the end about life. And I think we both are in agreement with this. It was evident to me on October the 7th, Hamas didn't care about life. And when you deal with people that don't care about life, how hard does that put nations in places? Because Israel's facing this tonight. I mentioned a while ago, the propaganda war they're fighting is worse than the war itself. I mean, because it's like you said, you've got an enemy that don't care about life, but yet you're trying to preserve life. And unfortunately, you've got to take the life of your enemy to do it. And it gets so convoluted and complicated when you think about it. But when you deal with an enemy that don't care about life, it's just about impossible to fight it. Is it not?
Well, it's very difficult. There's certainly historical precedent for it. I mean, we saw the kamikazes in the World War II that would be attacking as they were losing the war and became desperate. They would load a lot of explosives onto an aircraft that was otherwise stripped down and use their remaining pilots to fly them into our ships, the warships that we had in the Pacific, and try to destroy them. And they had some success by doing that too. So yes, and then of course we've seen these guys strap bombs on their kids and strap bombs on themselves and put them in cars and all that sort of stuff. So they're perfectly willing to cause casualties, random, not necessarily even particularly targeted. Take 9/11, blowing up the World Trade Center and stuff like that. There was no military aspect to that. They tried to attack the Pentagon too, but they're the willingness to kill unrelated innocent civilians to make a political point is essentially the problem that we're faced with these groups. So for me, my take on it is that if you get into the game of killing, you need to be prepared to die. And I think that's what we should make them do is, take them, straight to meet their maker, because they're in the business of killing innocent people. So I would be perfectly willing to be pretty hard on that sort of thing. Now, of course, There's no political will for that. Even, I after 9/11, the day of 9/11, they had an interview with a woman on the street, and she was saying, oh yeah, go get them, go get them. I mean, I'm not saying we have to kill their women and children, but go get them. And even under the worst of circumstances, there's a lot of reservations out there among people for these things. I would say that's one of our great problems. Like I mentioned earlier, we can stop a lot of the narcotics trade easily. We just have to have the political will to go stop it. And you're not going to stop something like those guys by asking them nicely. And liberals, I hear them talk about terrorism all the time. Well, the reason they turn to terror is because they're poor. Well, no.
They're not that poor. They're evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's part of their religious beliefs. I mean, here's one of the differences about Islam that doesn't get talked about here in the United States too much. They talk about it all the time, but it's not a religion as we think of it, because it is a political movement, a military movement, and a religious
excellent
movement
point.
combined into one. And so it's just not the same. I personally, I don't think it should be classified as a religion in the United States, because it's should have more of a cult status because of the political and military aspects of it in addition to the religion. And I think if a reformation were to take place in Islam and got rid of the political and military aspect, then that would be a different thing.
But you're right.
It's a
great point.
But that's not going to happen. So the world is just getting so much more dangerous. It's just getting more and more and more dangerous. And with this ineptitude that we see on the part of Biden, I don't know. Things worry me.
I've kept you over a little late. I just want to ask you one quick question, and you sort of almost answered it right then. 1 minute.
Right.
In all your years of serving our country, and buddy, how I feel about you. You're a good friend, and I respect your service. I've always respected your service, what you've done for our country. But in all your years fighting for America, have we ever been in more danger than we are tonight? Have there been any times of history that you can remember in the past that these threats were as bad as they are tonight? And I know a lot of it has to do with our leadership. I know that we made this conversation would probably be a whole different topic if Trump was in office, or somebody like Trump was in office, or somebody that had a brain that understood these things that you and Jeemes understand. But when you've got weak leadership like we've got, it breeds danger. It breeds these things bad. And I don't think I've ever been as concerned. I'm not a fearful kind of guy. I don't walk around scared of my shadow. I don't walk around wondering if something's going to fall out of the sky on me or something like that. I'm just not that kind of guy. But I have truly felt a troubled heart ever since 2020. But I have felt a troubled heart. I even felt it under Trump to a degree. I felt it under all of these presidents. Brad, we're in dangerous times, man. We're just in dangerous times. And my question to you as we close tonight, are these the most dangerous times you've ever seen in your years of fighting enemies, domestic and abroad?
I would say there have been individual threats that were along these lines, but as sort of if the ultimate threat that we're discussing is, could this slip into a major conflict on the world stage? Yes, I think we're in the greatest danger we've been.
I got you.
Just because there's so many things going on, there could have been smaller conflicts that would have been, where there was a lot of risk. But here, it's just the risk is different, and it could easily turn out to be multiple countries getting involved, and you've got a lot of places. I mean, Turkey's very involved, and has been involved in conflicts. What happened in Azerbaijan and with Armenia and with Russian backing. I mean, that could have turned ugly. There's other things going on out in the world where these different groups are kind of sizing each other up. And what happens when China goes into Taiwan? I mean, what happens? Is that then going to?
I know. I was thinking of that tonight. I mean, do we have World War III? Do we have what's going to happen? What will America do? I mean, Are we going to just sit there and let her do it? Or are we going to sit around and Brad, look, if what it's not if, but what you said earlier tonight, if Joe Biden is sitting there dealing with Iran, and I heard there is a report out on Gateway Pundit, I think we posted it on the Telegram room, that he's basically said that if he gets reelected, that he's told the Iranians privately that he is going to basically come down on Israel like a brick. That all this bluster about he supports Israel right now is nothing but bullshit, okay? And you know what bullshit means, and I don't have to spell it out. It's something that smells very bad on a hot South Georgia day in a pile in South Georgia. No, it's bullshit. And I've always known it was bullshit that he supported Israel. Well, he's coming out and admitting it, that if he gets reelected, that he's told the Iranians and the enemies of Israel, basically, I'm going to let you ain't got nothing to worry about because we're going to throw our weight behind you and we're going to pressure Israel to do exactly what you want them to do. Brother, that's dangerous. That's dangerous.
It is dangerous, and I think it's what Jeemes had mentioned earlier on, where there's certain areas in the United States, like some of the districts where the Islam is big and powerful and has a lot of votes. In Michigan, for example, Democrats need to win Michigan, so they've got to basically play up to these Islamic extremists, and so they're doing everything they can do to appeal to that voter bloc because they need it to win elections in the United States. So it's what's important to them takes precedent over what's important to the United States, and unfortunately, that's the nature of politics. Ever since we created professional politicians, that changed the dynamic, and they're, as a professional politician, they need a job. Most of these guys that are politicians, when they when they lose office finally, they don't have a job. Nobody wants them.
That's a great point. It's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump talks about Mark Meadows. Mark Meadows was a senior guy in Congress and the political name and all that sort of stuff. He finally loses his election and he goes on bended knee to Trump, going, "I need a job." And Trump gave him a job, and he later kind of screwed Trump over. But
I know.
That's the nature of politicians today. They're a bunch of.
Well, listen, we're gonna make up for lost time. I'm gonna get you back on 1st of June. Again, because we didn't even get to the political stuff tonight because we've had so much going on overseas and the overseas threats. But I do want to bring you back soon. Talk to you when you get back from Montana. That's probably a good time to do it because that way you can share with us what happened up there with your trip. And intelreform.org, folks, is Brad's website. I encourage you to go there. We support him monthly with a little donation, and we believe in what he's doing. We've always believed in what he's doing. He's a dear friend, and buddy, I appreciate you being with me tonight. And I didn't mean to keep you up so late, but I tell you, I'm going to be honest with you. And of all the shows we've done, I would rank tonight up there in the top 1 or 2, 3, because I tell you, this was really good meat, and I hope people will go back, even listen to the replay, because there's a lot of things that have been said tonight that I hope people have taken it very seriously, because we're in dangerous times, and this is not for. I put it like this: the times we live in are for serious people that are thinking seriously and thinking soberly. This is not a time for a bunch of foolishness and a bunch of crazy conspiracy bullshit and a bunch of conspiracy talk that people can't prove and all this letter nonsense and all this crap that people are out there spewing that ain't true. These times that we live in, Brad, is going to require a sober mind. Sober mind, man. And that's why I appreciate you and James Akers, because y'all have got sober thinking, and God knows that's at a premium these days. And I appreciate you much. Listen, I'm going to let you go. Tell Elvis behind you that I appreciate him letting you stay a little later tonight. Hey, you got any final thoughts? I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Final thoughts.
I would. Let me add one thing about we're getting hard into the elections. It's clearly going to be on the Republican side, it's going to be Trump is going to be the nominee. On the Biden side, he's won the nomination. There's a lot of talk about he will not stick through the process at the Democrat convention. It might go, but I personally don't think that'll happen. I think he's in for the election himself.
I do too.
But we'll see how it goes. But one of the reasons I long ago came out and endorsed from AIR, Americans for Intelligence Reform, I came out and endorsed Trump. And one of the reasons, long before the other people had been beat out by Trump, and the reason I endorsed him over anybody else is because he's been such a target of all of this stuff, this corrupt judge that's in New York doing the case and all those things. Trump understands on a visceral level just how bad it has become.
Yes.
All the federal agencies have basically been taken over, controlled, and corrupted by the left. They've been politicized and weaponized to act against their political enemies. I certainly have suffered from that. I'm on a lot of shit lists for the things that I talk about and do. And, I shouldn't say that word.
No, you can do that. No, you can say whatever you want to say. This is the Mac. This ain't Romper Room, Johnson. These people, this ain't Romper Room or Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. This is the freaking McFiles. You say what you want to say. We don't care.
All right. So, like for example, I mean, there are the browsers and stuff that you can't even put in my actual web address, the intelreform.org, and get to my
That's true.
website.
That's true. No, you're right.
I'm blocked on all sorts of levels. YouTube just made me persona non grata for no particular reason. I didn't have any strikes or anything, but they just said, you're not the type of person we want on here, because I was used so much in the January 6th witch trials that they had in Congress. It's just put me on everybody's, since I'm able to say it puts me on a lot of these people's shit lists. So, you can be sure that when the FBI was meeting with these different social media giants, that my name is one of the ones on their list, and I've been blacklisted by all sorts of people and stuff. So it's, like I said, it's one of the reasons I've started to change my tactics. But the point being out of all of this, that Trump understands all those same things because he's gone through it times 1,000 compared to me. So he sees all of that, and none of these other guys do. They sort of intellectually maybe understand it, but they've never felt it. Now, of course, the question is, what will Trump do about it? What will he do about it? And I don't know the answer to that, but I know some of the people around him. I know that he's aware of all of these things. I think they are talking about these things. We've started to see some activity of the right nature. Lawsuits take place by the IRNC with Laura Trump,
yes,
his daughter-in-law, in there. So some of these lawsuits that they've started are the right thing to do at the right time. So once he wins the nomination and has standing, I'm hoping that we're going to see a lot more take place, a lot more lawsuits, things that, like, I think it would be pretty easy going in advance to block the use of any voting machine that can be linked up by internet in any way. All that needs to be turned off and blocked. And I think that should be the absolute number one priority of the Trump campaign, is to stop any sort of voting machine that is accessible by internet. And if they can turn that off or get them out of the system altogether, I think Trump's unbeatable.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He can lose an honest election.
I'm with you there. Totally with you, man. Well, buddy, listen.
So I think he'll turn this around for us. So that's
I do
my
too.
hope and prayer.
No, I hope. And again, he's got 4 years, and it's going to be a wild time. And look, we're going to have a show tomorrow night, so we'll have a time with the audience more tomorrow night. But I will ask you one 30-second answer here. Nikki Haley endorsing Trump, was that a surprise? I figured when she backed up and rethought her dumb move trying to run against him that she was never going to vote for Joe Biden. I don't know what the left thought, these never Trumpers thought Nikki Haley was going to do. I was no fan of Nikki Haley, but I don't think she was stupid either. I think that she did the right thing. That's just my opinion. I mean, I'm pretty sure she believes that tonight. She did the right thing too.
I think so. And yeah, I mean, I would hope that she would never be so stupid as to think she should be endorsing Biden, but one never knows, I guess. But
the never Trumpers tonight are out there basically calling her every name in the freaking book because they thought she was going to. And I'm thinking, you never Trumpers, I got a word for you that I can't use on my network tonight, but let me just say it like this. If they thought that she was that stupid, then they're that more stupid than what they thought she was. Because I never believed she'd ever endorse Biden.
Yeah, I think she would have. I would have kind of expected her to stay quiet. I mean,
that's
her. I thought her campaign was fairly, lackluster. She was sort of the last person trying. Everyone else had figured it out by then. And for her to come out, I think what she's doing is trying to revive her political career by coming out and endorsing Trump because she sees the writing on the wall. This is only going to go one way, and so she wants to come out and endorse him and probably looking for a job. She might be one of those people that now she ran for president.
Yeah.
Now she needs a job.
Maybe she needs a job, and that may be it, man. I do not believe, and this is something we can talk about in June when you come back, I do not believe he needs to pick her as number 2. I think he needs to stay away from that. But and people can think what they want to Nikki Haley. I'm actually proud that she did not stay silent and came out and said, I'm going to vote for Trump, because that took some guts and courage to do, because the fallout's already happening against her tonight. The very people that used her when she was trashing Trump have turned on her tonight. And that should tell us all the bullshit crap that goes on behind the scenes with these political pundits and these political networks. It's all about who trashes Trump. You're the golden boy until you stop trashing Trump, then you become the turd girl or the turd boy. And that's the truth, Brad. I mean, that's politics. So I think it took a little bit of courage for her because she could have stayed quiet. She could have said nothing. But I do give her kudos. And look, we're fair on this program. And people don't have to like her. It has nothing to do with my preference of what she did was right or not. I think her and Ron DeSantis both made grave mistakes in even starting campaigns. There was no way in hell they were going to defeat Trump. There's just no way, and they just hurt themselves doing it, and it just left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth about both of them. And they'd have been better off just to get behind him from the beginning and say, look, if you'll help us in 28, we got you right now. We know it's your race this year, and just be there for us in 28. And I think Trump would have done that. I do. I think Trump would have done the right thing by either one of them. But it's going to be hard pressed. All right. Now, I'm not going to get a bill for you being over tonight, right? I'm not going to be getting like this bill for extra time that I've kept you on the McFiles tonight on this Thursday or anything. Because
I prefer the Godfather approach. There's a time when I need a favor, and I'll call upon you.
No horse heads in beds is all I got to say. No horse heads in beds, Johnson. And anyway, listen, buddy, thank you so much. No bears. We got bears down here, so no bear heads. That's all I got to say. Hey, buddy, listen, thank you. Be safe traveling, and I'll be in touch with you soon. And when you get back, we're going to have that steak together, okay? And
all right, Chris, I look forward to it.
Brad, thank you so much for being with me tonight. God bless you, friend.
My pleasure. Good night to all of your audience.
Brad Johnson, everybody. Put some fire in that house for him. That is one of the greatest patriots. I tell you, he's a good man, and I appreciate him very much. I know it's late tonight, folks. We've been going an hour and 40 minutes, and we've gone a little bit over tonight. But I tell you, when you get two heavyweights on like Jeemes, Akers, and Brad Johnson, I mean, what can you say? I mean, it don't get much better than what we had tonight. And Roger Hooker and Tim Neal said these are one of the best McFiles shows we've had ever. I tend to agree with that. And Roger said we got an education tonight, and we did. We really did. Jason, I appreciated what you said a while ago. And Corey, I'm going to mention your and Roger's question. Jason says the Palestinians elected Hamas, and that's absolutely right. It means violence. Hamas means violence. And I love what Jason said down here, too. Biden in office is China's window of time. As long as Biden's in office, that's exactly what they're doing. They're waiting for Biden because they know they've got as much time as he's in office and so forth. It's really been good stuff tonight. And, man, I tell you what, it don't feel like we've been going for an hour and 40. I'm just going to say this about Corey's question. Corey, we did talk about China. Brad and Jeemes discussed it. You're fine. I know you got in late, but we did discuss that. Roger, we also talked about them buying up the land and the companies. Earlier, there was a question that came up earlier, and we covered that. So just if you'll go back and listen to the replay, Brad and Jeemes both. I tell you, it was super having them both on tonight. I like these panels. We've not had them on in a long time. And we're going to, as we get closer into the election, we're going to do more of this panel stuff. We've got some old friends coming back. Cheryl Todd, her and her husband are pro-Second Amendment advocates out in Arizona. We've not had Cheryl on in a few years, and she agreed that she wants to come back, and we're grateful to have her back on sometime in June. We've got her coming. Tony Brank will be back with me soon next week. We've got Holly Pavek interview we did previously, a pre-recorded interview from a few weeks ago. We've not played yet. We're going to play that on one of the Faith Nights. We got William Federer. He's going to be back with us soon. So we're going to be wrapping it up. Now, tomorrow night, it's just going to be me. We've had a lot of information, and we're going to do a newscast tomorrow night, a new show with headlines. We'll do some Branko cartoons and do a little comedy stuff. I'll have the cowboy hat on, and we'll interact with you at McFiles Free for All Friday. And we'll let you have your say tomorrow night. And it's a little late. No more shows. This is it for tonight. And I'm really gleaning. I'm sitting here really in awe of what we just experienced. I tell you, folks, there's a lot of stuff that was said tonight that you probably have heard for the first time. I was not aware that this situation in Iran with the president, he had made this deal with Biden about Israel and this Palestinian state. And I tell you what, Genesis 12:3, that's all I got to say. That's all I'm going to say is Genesis 12:3. Let's just say that maybe that's one of the reasons the Iranian president ain't with us no more tonight. And I'll just leave it at that. But interesting stuff. All righty. And again, folks, I know some of you are not big fans of Nikki Haley, and that's fine. I don't have Nikki Haley bumper stickers anywhere to sell you. I'm not trying to sell a Nikki Haley bumper sticker, but I will say this about her before I close, and I'm going to deal with this more tomorrow night. It took courage to come out and say I'm voting for Trump. She could have kept her mouth quiet, and I'm not saying I trust her no more than any of you do, and that's fine. It's nothing to do with trust. But in this toxic world of politics and this toxic world of the media, and I told Brad this, and it's already happening tonight, the same people that used her when she was trashing Trump, and they were, she's the greatest person under the sun. The same people are calling her every name in the book, and some of these names ain't too good tonight. And that's the nature of the game. That's the nature of the game. But it all goes back down to Trump. You trash Trump, you're a darling of the media. You support Trump, they will turn on you like night is day. And the opposite is true. Liz Cheney's father was called every freaking name in the world during the Iraq War. Warmonger, killer, murderer, war criminal, trying for treason, hanging from nooses. I mean, they were calls for his execution, him and Bush. And Liz Cheney was right there with him. They were saying the same thing about Liz Cheney. They hated Liz Cheney's guts. When she started hating Trump, Liz Cheney became the media spokesman and the media darling. It's all about Trump. So you're entitled to your opinion on Nikki Haley. I don't share the same opinion tonight. I don't like what she did. I don't like what Ron DeSantis did. It's done. They're going to have to live with the consequences of it. But I'm glad she came out and made a verbal statement that she's supporting Trump. Now, whatever happens from here is whatever. I heard one report, and I tend to believe it. Her husband had been on leave during the campaign. And I think what happened to Nikki Haley when he got home, she got her family situation oriented again like it needed to be. Your spouse has gone overseas for months. It's not easy. And I just heard one report, and I don't doubt this, that he talked some sense into her. And she sort of shook herself, whatever, and realized that it's time to just do the right thing. And for that, I salute her tonight. All righty. I'll leave it alone. Thank you all for being with me tonight. We've had an extended McFiles. I'll probably get a bill from Johnson for this. Godfather style. If I'm not on here tomorrow night, you'll know why. I love Brad Johnson. I just love Brad Johnson. We have all sorts of conversations outside this camera. We cannot discuss on the camera sometimes, but we have a good time together. He's a good man. And we hope you enjoyed him. And James Akers, man, I tell you, they both were great. Listen, I appreciate you all being with me tonight. Put some fire in that house. Jason Miller, good to see you tonight. Cleo, thank you for moderating. And saw out Dory earlier tonight. Thank you all for being with us. Jimmy, good to see you. Elaine, thank you. All of you. that were here tonight, and I don't want to miss any names. If you're in that chat room, we thank you for being with us tonight. And we see some old names we ain't seen in a while. It's good to see y'all back, and good to have you in the house tonight. And anyway, thank you so much. And we'll see you in the morning, Faith Bible Study. We've got to tell you what happened today in Pakistan. It was very special. We'll let you know about that in the morning on the Faith Network. And then tomorrow night, probably around 8:39, just me, a mano. We'll let you run your mouth along with me after we run our mouth for a little bit with some news headlines of the week, some Branco cartoons, and anything else I can make up. I mean, anything else I can come up with. Jason Miller appreciates that. Now, Johnson had told me to go out and find a hard-hitting spy tune for him when he comes on, and I found one that I'm going to play it next time he comes on, but we found a new tune going out, and I'll play that going out tonight. So enjoy the music going out, talk to each other, fellowship a little bit. I'll see you in the morning. Have a good night, everybody. Put some fire in that house. See you in the morning and then tomorrow night.